What's up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what's happening with the economic calendar moving forward, break down some very, very key levels to watch when it comes to the way the market's going to be moving, and what I think is going to pan out going into tomorrow. But just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you guaranteed 15 in total. Not to mention 8.1% APY on uninvested cash. The offering's in just about 2 days from now. Anyways, let's talk about what's happening with this market. So, one thing worth mentioning is that SPY and ES have these head and shoulders like patterns that are developing on the charts. And if we can't break the high right over here, if we can't break some of these highs, there's a very good chance that this could continue to pan out, leading to a lot more downside. So, I'll be watching this very, very closely going into the week to see if this is going to happen. And we'll see how the New Year's ends up affecting this as well. So, I'll be talking about that first before I break down these charts. Just know that for tomorrow, it's going to be Monday, December 30th, 2024. It's going to be the last Monday of 2024 as the New Year is approaching. And at 9:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, that's 15 minutes after the market opens, we have the Chicago PMI reports. This may cause some volatility for the broader markets, so just be prepared just to be safe. Then we also have some manufacturing numbers at 10:30 a.m. and at 11:30 a.m. we have the 3 and 6 month bill auctions. So watch for those very, very carefully, and we have to see what ends up happening. On Tuesday, there's not really much that's coming out for Tuesday. We just have very, very minor data. And then don't forget that Wednesday is going to be New Year's. So the stock market's going to be closed. So is the bonds market. So just keep that in mind. We're not going to be having trading on Wednesdays. It's going to be another short week. So we'll see what happens for Monday. It's going to be the last Monday of the year. So we'll see what that leads to. Also, know that there's nothing coming out for earnings for the week because of the new year. It's going to be very quiet. And then finally, when it comes to other pieces of news, we have the fear and greed index currently at fear. This is going to lead to some volatility. There's a lot of fear that's still present in the market after everything that happened. We'll see if we get more neutral or not, but for now, fear is still very, very present. Momentum is also at fear. Although we were trying to become neutral, the market got a rejection, so we're back to fear. If we can't break the highs to get back to neutral, this is going to likely get even more fearful, so just keep that in mind. And then the put to call option ratio is very interesting. Like I said before, this was going up as the market was pumping. Then as soon as the market just pumps and pumps and pumps, this starts going down. We start to see a lot of these puts being closed. Then the market starts dumping after that. So it ends up doing the opposite of what a lot of these traders and investors were expecting. As people started going long, the market was, falling. As they start, shorting the market more, the market starts running. And then as they start closing the shorts, the market starts dumping again. So it's doing the opposite. It's really screwing over a lot of traders right now. And that's what the market's trying to do, is trying to screw as many people as possible. So that's the reason why we're seeing moments where the market's pumping, then it's dumping, then it's pumping. It's all over the place. And one of the biggest factors causing this is the options chain. These market makers know exactly what's going on, and they're doing this to their own advantage. Now, volatility is neutral right now. So now the VIX, although it was dumping really hard, we were talking about how it was approaching key support near the 14 area. We held that. So now we're trying to rebound. So this is looking pretty good. So I'll just have to see what this leads to. For other factors out there, just know that, and I'm going to make this very clear, the market is still in a very, very interesting trend. There is this head and shoulders like structure on SPY, but whether or not we end up trying to reverse it or if we get a big rug pull depends on some factors. There was some news that came out involving many of these, very important figures from the Mag 7 meeting up with many political figures. And then there was also a lot of news involving like Tesla that's coming out. So Tesla's going to be a big one to watch for. We have deliveries coming out in just a couple of days, and then we have more data as well. So a lot of stuff are coming out for the end of the year. There's going to be tax harvesting that has to be accounted for, and then what's happening with these different like hedge funds and their balance sheets. So a lot of stuff are happening. So I just want to say this, okay? We could throw all of that aside and just focus on the chart. I think that's going to be the most important thing to do. If you're bullish on SPY, just hypothetically, okay, let me go over the hypotheticals first and I'll talk about my prediction. Hypothetically, if we're bullish, you want to see SPY push and try to get back above our 50 EMA at 598. If we could hold above this, you want to see it break the highs from what we saw a couple of days ago. So from Thursday, December 26th, the high was at that 603 area. If that breaks, we go back up for 606 and the Santa rally is going to be continuing. There's going to be a big Santa rally if we break past 598 to then 600, and eventually up above those highs to invalidate this head and shoulders. If we're bearish, if we pump and then reject and start losing 592, this is going to be leading to a much bigger dump all the way back down to about 588. So 588 is going to be our next potential target. And if that fails us, this is going to be a risk of coming down to 585 and all the way back down to these lows down here. This imbalance takes us down to like 580. There's going to be a big dump if we end up losing 592. So you want to keep that in mind. If we close below that, it's going to be a very, very bad sign. So what do I think is going to pan out from here? What's the most likely possibility? Okay, so I went over the bearish case and the bullish case. Well, I am concerned about this head and shoulders on the 4-hour time frame, which is showing some weakness. And then if you zoom out and go to the daily, if you guys check out the daily is also showing some weakness. We're getting this rejection right over here. We still have that very, very strong looking head and shoulders. And for now, the market's looking a little bit heavy. We haven't lost critical support on the daily at 592 either, so we're still technically holding support. So for the time being, I'm going to say just be a little bit more careful. So here's my view. I think that's tomorrow. What's going to likely happen is as we're going to see a surge in volatility, volume tends to go up on Mondays. So there's going to be a lot of volume coming into the markets. This will likely help drag this a little bit higher. So I might be looking for a test of 596 to 598, somewhere in that range to start things off. However, if you look at the last, few days, if you look at like Friday, SPY kind of like pumped and then dumped afterwards, and we could be looking for something very, very similar as well. If we do get some kind of pump and dump like move. So I think that we look a little bearish here. There could be a miniature head and shoulders on the 4-hour as well. There might be a small push to very close to the 596s, but then if we reject and come back down, we're looking for a retest of 592. If that fails us, we come back down. And I think that's going to be the most likely possibility. We push in the morning to this 596 to 598 area, and we could be forming our right shoulder, a miniature right shoulder right over here. And this is also a much larger right shoulder on the head and shoulders, as the daily is showing weakness and our 4 hours also showing weakness on the PPO. Then we reject and make a move back down to 592. If that fails us, we're looking for a much bigger dump to 588, if not 585. So keep that in mind. We might start off with a push in the morning. If we can't get back above the highs from what we saw, earlier last week, then we're going to be, if we fail to do that, we're going to be looking for a turn and a move back down. I also want to call out the fact that we're making lower highs technically, so that's also looking a bit more bearish. So that being said, we'll be watching to see what ends up happening here. We could be pushing a bit higher. If it rejects here, we're looking for a dip back down to 592. And if that fails us, we're looking for a much bigger dump. There's a head and shoulders on SPY on the 4-hour, also on the much larger time frames. So I think the odds favor a pump tomorrow morning, then a dump later on. And we could be looking for a test of 596 to 598 in the morning, and then a move back down if that fails us to 592. On ES, we have the same setup, okay? The same thing is going on right over here. We have a head and shoulders like pattern right over here. There's a left shoulder that's very, very evident, a head up here, then a right shoulder. So from the way I see things, if we're bullish, we want to see this thing reclaim 6060. If that breaks, we're looking for 6100 plus. If we reject here, make a lower high, we're looking for a move back down towards 6000. If that fails us, we're going to be dumping all the way down to about 5960 or below. So looking at the way things are moving, we could be looking for a left shoulder here, a head and a right shoulder. As we push higher for 6050 to 6060, we're looking for this right shoulder to be forming, and then a rejection right back down as the most likely possibility. I also want to mention that ES, just like SPY, is making lower highs. And if you look at, for example, on the daily time frame, we're seeing a little bit of weakness developing on ES, right? We're making these lower highs here. We have a head and shoulders, and there's going to likely be more downside coming. So I think what's going to happen is this. I think that we're going to be forming a head and shoulders. We're going to attempt a rebound in the morning for 6050 to 6060. Then we could be rejecting here and making a move back down towards 6000 or below. So there's a left shoulder here. There's a head and there's a right shoulder forming. That could be leading to more downside. For other factors, we have Tesla. I want to call out Tesla because we have deliveries coming out. Whatever Tesla announces is going to be very important for their future, and we have very high expectations from these investors. So we have support right now at 432. I think that because we're holding this, despite the fact that we're making lower highs on Tesla, it is technically a little bit more weak now because of that. Despite that, we could still see a small rebound going into tomorrow because typically when we approach deliveries, it does try to push a bit. So I wouldn't be surprised if we try to retest 440, maybe even go up to about 443.8, very close to our 20 EMA. But if we can't break this high up here, it might just be another lower high than a move back down and a lot of sideways price action as we approach the big reports. Remember, we only have about 2 days of trading. So we have Monday and Tuesday, the market's going to be trading. Wednesday, the stock market is going to be closed. And then on Thursday, sometime Tesla's going to be announcing deliveries. And then we're going to be looking for a big reaction. So there's only 2 full days of trading until we get the big deliveries report. So just keep that in mind. I think what's going to happen is this. Tesla rebounds tomorrow. It loves to do that in the mornings. If you look at the chart, we like to rebound and dump, rebound and consolidate, rebound, eventually like dump, rebound and dump. So we should look for a rebound to start things off. to get very close to 440 to 443.8, then we could be looking for a rejection after that if it ends up failing, especially if we lose 432. When you look at the daily time frame, Tesla's looking weaker. We still have this gap to fill down here, and there is this support at 414 to watch for. That's going to be very, very key. So if 414 fails us, we turn bearish. We're looking for a move back down towards the low 400s. If we get back above 440, we could attempt to fill this gap that's close to like 453, but I want to see it get it back above at least 448 to do that. If 448 breaks, we look for that push, but that's not looking as likely. I think what's going to happen is we push a little bit to get to this resistance at 443.8. Maybe it goes a little bit higher, but then we'll be watching to see if we get a rejection afterwards and we just close in between these EMAs in the 430s. I find that that's to be the most likely possibility. A push, then a dip as time goes on because the market may slow it down. NQ is doing the same thing. If you look at NQ, we have a high up here, came down, made a lower high, came down, made a lower high, came down. So it's doing the same thing again. We could attempt a rebound on the 4-hour to get back up to about 21,836. Then we could reject here and start dipping back down. There are lower highs being made, so watch and see how it goes, at least on the 4-hour. And then on the daily time frame, we're continuing to make lower highs again. If we fail to hold above 21,730, we could be looking for a dip back down towards 21,500. So watch and see how things end up going. We have 21,361 as our main support, so watch and see how this ends up going as well, and then we'll give this the time it needs. With that being said, we're continuing to make lower highs. We're showing a lot of weakness. And I just want to say that there is going to be a risk of an NQ kind of dipping a little bit lower. We have lower highs over here. We came down in a lower high and we could continue to fall. And then we'll just have to watch and see how things end up going. On the 4-hour time frame, we're going to continue to make these lower highs. We could attempt a rebound for 21,800 or so. And then if we reject here, we could be dumping lower towards these lower levels. But I think we're in a range right here. There's still that possible left shoulder here ahead in the right shoulder. We'll look for a rebound tomorrow for 21,850, maybe a little bit above that. Then we could be dipping back down as we're making lower highs to make a move back down to these lower levels. I find that to be the most likely possibility on NQ. On the QQQ, it's the same thing, exact same setup. We're making lower highs technically. There will be a rebound attempt because of this big red bar here. So we're going to be looking for an attempt to retest 524 to 525 for a small push tomorrow morning. Could go a little bit higher, but then I think the trend does suggest that this is like a left shoulder. This could be a head and this is a right shoulder. We need to break past 530 to turn bullish on the QQQ. If we can't get back above 530, it could just be another lower high that's going to be made, only for us to start dipping back down towards 520 or below. So watch to see what ends up happening. That's going to be the most likely possibility. On Nvidia, the same setup. So notice that we have a very interesting trend. This doesn't like to just like form these tops then just continue to run. Instead, what it does is it forms a top here, rejects. There's a top here, it rejects. A top here, it rejects. A top here, and it rejects over and over and over again. We have this resistance at 137.4, and if we end up losing 135, we're looking for a dump back down towards 133. We have a left shoulder here ahead than a right shoulder, so this could be forming a right shoulder before it starts to dump. So look for 137 and rejection is the most likely case for 135, and then eventually 133 is our supports. I think we're going to be looking for a rebound on Nvidia, especially because of the news that came out over the week about AI. But I think that there's going to be a test of 138, and we might not we might not break past these highs. So it might just be a lower high that's going to be made before it starts dipping back down, and then we'll be looking for a bigger move right after that. For other factors out there, we have Aapl. Apple's also making lower highs. So we have this big red bar, which is the rejection. We came back up to our 20 EMA only to slow down a bit. So it could try to push for 256 or above just temporarily before it starts dipping back down to like 254. If that fails us, we're looking for 251.8. Especially because of the support here, this is what's trying to hold it up. I do expect this to push a little bit for like the 256 plus area, but then there's no guarantee it's going to last. It might just push temporarily only to come back down. And I still think there's going to be a risk of us revisiting the 252 area because of the fact that there's weakness on the daily. The daily is also showing that weakness, which could lead to downsides. So just keep that in mind. Anyways, I went over more details of the majority of stocks that are important, but I just want to focus on the rest of these in less detail. So looking at, for example, Netflix, okay, we had this very interesting performance that happened over the weekend. Just know that despite that, there is still some signs that this is very much just range bound. Going into tomorrow, I think that we might be retesting the 912 area. If we hit this, we could reject and start dipping back down to 900. We're still in this range, so just keep that in mind. That's going to likely be how we end up lasting. For MSTR, we're also on a bit of a downtrend. We are making lower highs right here. We have this resistance to be watching for very close to about 340 and eventually 346. If we end up losing 330, we're looking for a dump back down to where this imbalance is. Look for a push for 340, then a rejection. Then we could be dumping all the way back down towards 329, if not lower. So if 329 fails us, we're looking for a dip back down to about 320. Look for a rebound and rejection as the most likely possibility. For Celsius is on a bit of a downtrend right over here. We could attempt to rebound back up for essentially 27, but then I do see lots of signs that we're continuing to reject off our 20 EMA. So even if it does retest 27, it could reject and continue to fall for this next support down here, which is where this imbalance is at 25.8. So I think that we push for 27, then dump to 25 as the most likely possibility. For Celsius, we saw an interesting move like that, and I think that Supermicro has a very similar setup. Supermicro has something very interesting. We are also rejecting off our 1520 EMAs. This looks more bearish to me. We could see a liquidity grab near the 32.5 area, but then I think it's going to likely continue to dip. I wouldn't be surprised if we actually see this thing fall closer to 30, looking at the 4-hour. So look for an attempt to dip even lower as a strong possibility. Palantir, I think that this may dip just a bit more. We have kind of like a cup and handle like structure. We need to break 84 to turn bullish, and if we can't do that, this will likely dip more. It is weak on the daily and the 4 hours, so I wouldn't be surprised if we retest 80 or so. Then we continue to dip back down to 76.94. That might be a nice target unless we hold above 80. So as long as we're as long as we're below 80, I think the 76s are coming. As long as we're above that, we could try to rebound. We should rebound a bit, then start dipping back down towards lower levels. So give us the time it needs. For Rivian, we have an interesting structure. We are making lower highs right over here. We need to try to reclaim 14. If we can't do that, we're going to likely be dipping back down towards the 13 area. So I think there's a very, very good chance that that's going to be coming. So as we're making lower highs right here, the 13 and then 12.5 area is going to be a very, very nice area of interest. So look for a retest of 13.7 to 13.87. We could retest that, then reject and start dumping back down to about 13 flat. I think there's a very good chance that this is going to be dipping as well. For SoFi is also making lower highs right over here. We'll have to see if we can reclaim 16. Otherwise, this is going to likely continue to dump back down towards 15.68. If that fails us, we're looking for a dip back down towards 15.16. For the IWM Russell 2000, we're making lower highs right over here. So we are continuing to reject. We have 223.8. We're continuing to make lower highs compared to that. If that rejects, we could be dipping back down to 220. If that fails us, we're looking for a move back down to about 218. So as you can tell, we're making lower highs right over here. So as of right now, we're not doing the best of jobs. And because we're making lower highs, this will likely continue to dip. I think that this might retest 223.5. If we can't break that high, it's going to likely just make a lower high before it starts to dip. I think that the overall trend is technically more bearish. We've been continually just making lower highs and lower lows. So I wouldn't be surprised if it retests 223.5. And if we can't break above that or hold above it, we could just hit that, then start dipping back down towards 220. For others out there, we have AMD, which is on a bit of a downtrend right now as well. This is continuing to make lower highs right here. We might be retesting 124. If that fails us, we could be looking for a move back down to 122. We also have these gaps to fill around 120, so I do anticipate some more downsides, a strong possibility. ARM is looking a bit more bearish. We need to try to get back above 131 to turn back up. Otherwise, it's favoring a move back down to 124. For Coin's on a bit of a downtrend. We're making lower highs and lower lows. We have to reclaim 270 plus. Otherwise, this is going to likely continue to fall for 257. I think there's a good chance we see 262, then eventually 257 as strong possibilities. Amazon's looking weaker. If you look at the daily, it's making lower highs here. We can if we can't reclaim 225, we're looking for a dump back down for 220. So I think there's a good chance it does dip to the lower 220s. For Meta is also showing some weakness. Where once again, we're forming lots and lots of these highs over and over again. This is starting to resemble an inverse cup and handle. Unless we reclaim 610, this is going to be at risk of coming down to 588. It should push to 604 going into tomorrow, but we got to reclaim 610. If it breaks that, we turn bullish. If we come short of 610, we just hit like 604 or so and reject. There's going to be a risk of it coming back down to 600 and eventually 590. For Microsoft, we're making lower highs as well. I want to see it get back above 431. Otherwise, there's going to be a risk of it coming back down to about 427. So it's continuing to look a little bit more bearish to me. For Google, we're range bound. We have resistance at 195 and support at 192. There's a left shoulder here. There's a head up here, then a right shoulder. So it could be dumping to 192 or below. So watch and see how it ends up going. For GameStop's trying to push here. We're looking for 33 star resistance. So we'll see what kind of reaction we get. AMC is also just on a bit of a downtrend. We are continuing to make lower highs. This could be dipping back down towards 3.94. For DJs here, we're also seeing like a head and shoulders. There's like a left shoulder here, a head, then a right shoulder. If we end up losing 35.7, we could be dumping back down towards 35 flat. For the VIX is also looking decent. This might dip a little bit looking at how it looks right now. It's possible it dips a little bit more. We do have two supports to watch for at 15.3, then eventually 14.6. Might be a small dip on the VIX because the market's going to rebound a bit, but then the VIX could still bounce. It could still make a very, very nice bounce between these levels, between 15.4 and also 14.65. And then if it bounces, that could be bearish for the markets. The 10-year has been going up a bit because of what's happening with inflation and with the Fed announcing they're going to be cutting a little bit less for next year. And the dollar index is also choppy right now. We have 108 as our resistance and 107.8 is our main support. So we're stuck in the middle. And we're waiting to see how this ends up developing. So give this the time it needs. With that being said, I want to thank you all so much for listening. The market is looking a little bit weaker when you look at like the 4 hours and the much larger time frames. There could be a rebound attempt that's coming looking at the way the charts are looking. So look for a small rebound tomorrow morning. But just like what happened on Friday, the market might not last. It might not last at the higher levels. It might be a small rebound only to reject as the most likely possibility for a bigger rug pull. The head and shoulders are present on SPY and ES, so please keep those in mind. With that being said, I thank you all so much for listening. Enjoy the rest of your guys' weekends, and I'll see you guys very soon tomorrow morning before market open. Thank you for listening, and peace out.